This is a special meeting of the Cupertino City Council. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Way.
Here.
Councilmember Willie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Paul.
And I'm here. Thank you very much. Okay, so in this special meeting, we have one item only, and I thank our members of staff for being here. This is the fiscal year 2022-2023 council goals and proposed city work program items kickoff. And we're here initially selecting city work program items for prioritization as part of this process. And so, Mr. City Manager Troop, I believe that there is a staff presentation. Would you like to introduce the presenter?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I'll be having Katie Namura, our Deputy City says clerk on your.
Oh.
Threw me off there. Deputy City Manager do the presentation for us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I'll be sharing the presentation this evening. Can everyone see this?
Yes, it's visible. Thank you.
Wonderful. So just an outline, as the mayor mentioned, we'll look at our strategic planning process for fiscal year 23, discuss council goals, which hopefully council will adopt tonight or make amendments and adopt. We did have a city work program goals survey, so we'll go over those results and then discuss items to include for prioritization as well as next steps. So we're here at the kickoff, as the mayor mentioned, and this is where we'll be reviewing goals and suggesting items for prioritization. This would be where commission items are included as well as staff suggestions, and this would be the opportunity for council to include any new items as well. After this point, departments will review the list of items to be prioritized to flesh out those details, and that list will come back for prioritization by council. Here are the current council goals that were for fiscal year 22, our current fiscal year: public engagement and transparency, transportation, housing, sustainability and fiscal strategy, quality of life, which includes some subcategories, including air quality, noise, public safety, recreation, and access to goods and services. I will note that there has been some discussion by council to align with the general plan guiding principles. And so you'll see that we've pulled those out in attachment A for your review. I will say that it does make sense to have kind of these annual goals to help guide you through all 12 guiding principles year after year. And so we will be including a note on each item in the adopted work program of what guiding principle it pertains to. So we did conduct a city work program goals survey. It was live from January 16th to February 14th. We received 185 responses, 255 visitors. The analysis revealed these categories, which are relatively in good alignment with the council's current goals. We do have dogs off leash areas leading the pack here. And we did break down some of those larger categories, did have smaller subcategories that presented themselves. So we wanted to make that transparent to everyone. Like dogs off leash areas, there were several responses from Monte Vista Park and Memorial Park. In transportation, it included a lot for bike ped. There were also traffic concerns in mass transit. Parks and recreation, there were comments specific to Memorial Park, as well as generally adding and improving parks and recreation areas. Quality of life had comments for public safety, blight reduction, and noise regulation. So as the first part of this discussion tonight, we hope to discuss work program goals, and hopefully council can coalesce around council goals they would like to adopt. And then as a secondary objective of this meeting is to determine what items council would like to prioritize at an upcoming session. This is in an effort to, instead of it's an effort to effectively use staff time, because it does take a lot of effort to, determine the budget, determine timelines, and resources involved in each of these items, even if they won't all be happening. And so it's helpful for us to know which ones is the council really interested in to prioritize, and then we'll go forth and do all of that effort to make sure you have the information you need to prioritize. And so these are the items that are recommended to include for prioritization. So this is kind of like a starting point, but council can feel free to add any items they would like to include for the full complete list that is in attachment C. And so we have several items here: license plate readers, additional DOLA locations, alternative transportation, etc. And then there are several carryover items just because they're multi-year items from the current fiscal year work program. Oh, and I will mention, sorry, on this slide, as well as the next slide, anywhere where we reference a commission, that means the commission explicitly recommended this item. And so we do have carryover items that were recommended by commissions as well. And we do recommend they be included for the prioritization process. And items that are not included here are expected to, not included here that are on the current city work program are expected to be completed by the end of this fiscal year. And as we've talked about, once council selects which items they'd like to prioritize, departments will estimate timeline and resources needed. And then that list with the additional information will come back to council for that prioritization session. And I am here for any questions.
Great. That was very, very to the point. Thank you, Katie. And so let's go ahead and bring this to our members of the public. Our members of the public, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak on this item. And so I will remind you, if you have your hand raised, by the time the first person is done speaking, you'll be called on for public comment. Again, this is our work plan item on the special meeting that was slated for 7:45 p.m. and we started a bit late. And so right now I only have one member of the public with a hand raised. Now I have two. They are from Jenny Griffin and Peggy Griffin. And so welcome, Jenny.
Yes, I was confused about what this meeting was, but I understand. And now we've got two Griffins. Oh, well, that's okay. The Irish are here tonight. Anyway, yes, thank you for the very speedy presentation. And I think that in light of what we just went through, I'm beginning more and more convinced that understanding what is going on with the housing element, the requirements from HCD, which are changing constantly, that is rising up to be, I would say, the next year's highest priority. I really didn't think that it would be that much. I just thought it would be like the last housing elements, but it has escalated in just so many of the cities in California are having their housing elements denied. You know, they're getting mixed instructions from HCD. You know, they're cagey, like nobody knows how you're supposed to get through this. It's like going through some sort of a dating app or something. I think that Cupertino has a lot of things. We're coming out of the pandemic. We need to make sure that our staffing is ramping back up, that we have goals for the future. But with the advent of this housing element drama, I'm going to call it, it's like a soap opera and a drama. We want to do it right. We want to do what the state requires. But to me, it is a song and dance. We're trying hard, but we can't cha-cha backwards in high heels if we are not getting clear, consistent information from HCD and Sacramento. Is anyone having oversight on HCD, or are they just making things up? So yes, I think in all the good work that this city has done, keeping everyone safe for the last 2 years, going through all the trauma and drama of COVID, coming out on the other end, we need to go back to the city council chambers eventually. But I think the housing element is becoming the new COVID. I won't say that. It is becoming the new drama for the year. But thank you all so much for working so hard on everything else. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And at this point, I only have 3 further hands raised. They are from Peggy Griffin, Janet Van Zoren, and Leanna Crabtree. And so I will go ahead and remind our members of the public, because I know that we had a lot of emails come in for one particular issue. If you want to speak on this item, you will need to raise your hand. And the reason I make this comment is that there was a request from a member of the public to consolidate time, but I can't consolidate time if people don't have their hands raised under this process. So I'll go on at this point to Peggy Griffin. Welcome, Peggy.
Good evening, council members, staff. I just want to clarify, because on item number 45, it calls it Lawson Middle School Bikeway. There's a lot of controversy currently about this, and this particular budget, I was told, was to look at the feasibility and evaluate alternative plans to what the current proposal is. The current proposal is not what was recommended by the consultant that did the safe walk audit. And so alternatives really need to be looked at and priced out. And I don't want this to be a rubber stamp of the current proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Next, we have Janet Van Zoren. Welcome, Janet.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm confused right now as to the status of the affordable housing project for people who have developmental disabilities, possibly at a site on Mary Avenue, and where that is being proposed in the new work plan. And also with regard to the affordable housing project that's been proposed by the county at the old Outback site. So if you could give me some indication of where that is, I certainly would like to propose that they remain high on the agenda because of all the problems in moving forward with those projects during the pandemic. They haven't moved very far. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Next, we have Leanna Crabtree. Welcome, Leanna.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Leanna Crabtree. I'm a Cupertino resident, and I wanted to speak in favor of the item related to improving transportation and travel options to and from the library and the Civic Center Plaza area. Prior to the pandemic, this was items related to traveling to and from the library were really important items that were addressed by the Library Commission. Of course, under the pandemic, everyone's needs changed, but some of the items that were discussed included, a cooperative agreement with the Cupertino Union School District to have satellite parking at Eaton School. There was discussion, and I don't know where it has gone, to have dedicated drop-off area, probably on Torrey Avenue, that was going to involve a carve-out. But we, had changes in the Public Works Department, and also the Park and Recreation Director changed, right at the time of the pandemic, and is probably not at all, or not very familiar with the kinds of challenges that we had, also related to curbing bicycle theft and anything related to short-term parking, and then just general fact that the demand for parking it really exceeded the capacity. So if we can encourage people through marketing campaigns and possibly changing some of the infrastructure around the library to accommodate other forms of transit, wayfinding signs, encouraging people to park in the neighborhoods, that would really, I think, go a long way to sort of boosting people's satisfaction with accessing library services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liana. And that is the last hand we have up for public comment. And so I will bring this back to council. We have our first hand raised from Councilmember Moore. And Councilmember Moore, would you like to start us off with questions or comments on the work plan? proposals.
Sure. Well, I want to thank Katie for the report, and especially thank you for having the general plan tie-in. I think that was something I might have asked for, and I was really glad to see it included in the packet to kind of keep us focused. I'm concerned that there are so many items on this list, and it's amazing how many of these projects that we have all going on at the same time. It's a huge list, which is great. So I just wanted to follow up on something that Leanna was talking about with regards to parking and the library. And I think perhaps one thing that we could use for in the interim is the spillover to the Torrey Avenue site, 10455 Torrey Avenue. Since we do own that property, it would seem that library patrons could park there. And I was told that some years ago there had been an agreement with that business park to have after hours parking there on the evenings and weekends. So I don't know if that's something that we could do in the future to bring that back, but that perhaps could help moving forward. And so I am wondering about things like building disposition. So we did a tour. All of the council members had tours of the Byrne property, Bletch property, Stockelmeyer, and we all had a tour of it, but without saying what it is that we would say each property would inevitably become. I was wondering how exactly do we construct a work plan item that would just simply say, we want to talk about these buildings and have a study session for what we're going to do with them moving forward. Or maybe that is the work plan item. We just want to have a study session to talk about it, rather than saying we have a work plan item this is going to happen to this building, which I tried last work plan to do that with Stockelmeyer. It didn't make it to the list. And so now I want a different approach, which is let's just talk about it and see if we can come up with what we can do there. And then also with the DOLA request, huge request. I don't know if having an off-leash area which isn't permanently fenced is best in all situations. And there may be places like parts of Lawrence Mitty that could have a fenced-in area. But I don't like with DOLA, I'm not really entirely sure to say, well, continuing on as Jollyman is elsewhere is the best approach, or we want to have a fenced-in area or some sort of combination. So again, I'm not really sure what to do with that one as a work plan item, because I'm not directive as what the best solution is. So if my other council members have some suggestions about those items, how to get them on the work plan, please bring them up. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Moore. I will say on the city properties, I think staff is receptive to putting an item to consider on a future agenda. I mean, as to actually putting that onto current year capital improvement projects, I think that's a much taller ask. But when I spoke to our staff about it, it seemed like there's some receptivity to doing what you suggested there. So Councilmember Willie's next, but let me check in with our city manager. Jim, you have your hand raised. Did you want to follow up on any of the items from Councilmember Moore?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And for Councilmember Moore, what we are discussing might help out too is currently in the evenings and other times we use the current parking lot here at City Hall and Community Hall and Library. We have city vehicles, so we're actually thinking about moving those over to Torrey Avenue to free up parking for others closer to it so they don't have to walk so far. So that's in the works right now, that we would use that for putting the other city vehicles over there and opening up more closer to the library.
Yeah, it's a good thinking prospectively for sure. These kinds of things, certainly they're hard to anticipate, with exactness. But I think as things open up, Civic Center will definitely start getting more congested. So, it's good that we're thinking about it ahead of time. I have a quick question for Katie. I was looking in my materials, Is the presentation available? I don't seem to have received it from staff on email, but is it in the public material that was released? The presentation that you just gave?
I believe so. There were some renumberings due to the desk item that will be published after this meeting, but generally speaking, the information is there.
But the presentation you provided, I asked
Right,
the
with
work.
the presentation. Yep.
Okay, so I'll just look in the publicly available materials for your presentation. And then a really quick question before I go to Councilmember Willie. From a process perspective, we now have a list, and I kind of think of this meeting as adding items to the overall list, but at some point we will be ranking these. Where does that fall in time relative to where we are right now? Because in previous years, we were basically asked to put, weighted rankings, I think scale of 1 to 5 or something like that, and you went and added them all up. So when are we contemplating that process will happen?
I believe it'll happen in very early April, March, April.
Early April. Okay, so we sit in, I guess, near the beginning of March right now. So in a month, maybe less, we'll be anticipating more of a cohesive list. Okay, so I just want to keep everyone on task here. If you like stuff, great. If it's already on the list, we're going to be considering it. We don't have to come out of this meeting. We're not being asked to come out of this meeting with a full prioritization of all of these work plan items because it's quite comprehensive and exhaustive and exhausting, but quite redeeming and worthy. I do have a hand raised from City Manager Troop, so I'll go ahead and call on you, Jim, after this very brief comment.
My apologies. I forgot to put it back down.
Oh, it's artifactual. Okay, great. So, basically, I would ask people if you hear or you think of something, my colleagues on council, that you haven't encountered or you want to kind of change it iteratively or even substantially, that would be the kind of value in your comments here. If it's really, we've heard a lot from, for example, the dog off leash area proponents. If it's a matter of saying, let's put this on and prioritize it higher, it's on there. It is certainly on the list, and our process for kind of voting it, however you wish to see it go. As Katie has said, that's a little bit off in the horizon. It'll come quickly, of course, but that's not what we're doing this evening right here. So, Councilmember Willie, and you're next, then followed by Councilmember Moore, then Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember.
Okay, yeah. Hey, thank you, Katie, for a lot of work. A couple things, and so to try and make progress on this, I think it would have been very helpful to maybe start with our existing work plan. Are any of the items finished and now removed from the existing work plan? If we decide that, or just mentally we think that a city work plan can have 40 items, and trying to get our arms around this huge list, but if we know that this is our current work plan, this is 8, 12, 14 that have now been finished, and now we have those slots to fill in. To me, that would have been really helpful. And so it gets a little more confusing when the existing work plan items are interdispersed in this list, because now, gosh, well, these ones that are already on our work plan and have been in work. That said, I would hope that in the future we can try to simplify the process for us. The next one is, so when I look at the list, I see number 29, license plate readers, and then I see number 41, pilot license plate recognition. And so there's one instance where our list is bigger than I think it really should be. Of course, the one that speaks to me is the city plan to end homelessness. Okay, great. And so I see it as item 1012, but then I also see it over there as item 66. So again, if I was to spend more time, because I went and printed this out today, I printed it out before, but now today's is an updated one. And to go through and try to, digest all of these, whereas the ones that, if those truly are different, I think they should be listed side by side. Maybe we would combine them, or at least at the very least, we would understand why there's two with different, objectives. So I then want to just kind of touch on, it sounds like the mayor's going to do the same process as before, which I thought was great. Each councilman will get 13 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s, and then we decide how we want to place those in terms of the priority. But I just want to be sure that, or I want to understand our ranking process for this current year's work plan. So I'll leave it with that for tonight, but I'll definitely take this list and go through it and try to place them in order of what I think the community's preferences are, top to bottom. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Woolley. And Katie, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak to some of Councilmember Woolley's comments?
Yeah, just so that I can clarify and also hopefully help point you to a more of a list that I think you were looking for. Can you see my screen right now? I don't see my normal bubble. But these, as you mentioned, Councilmember Woolley, here are all the carryover items. So we essentially did what you were asking in terms of what's going to be finished in the work program, what's not going to be finished and be multi-year. This is a list of everything that we're recommending to include for prioritization because they will be multi-year projects. Anything that's not listed here from the current fiscal year work program is expected to be completed. So we have done kind of what you mentioned in the carryover section of attachment C. Those are the items that need to be considered for next year. And then I also wanted to say, in this presentation, in attachment C, some of them are listed twice because they were recommended explicitly by a commission, and we didn't want to take away the clarity that these are the items the commission recommended. So we wanted to keep those there. But we also have carryover items in the carryover section that are duplicative. And so, but in this PowerPoint, we don't duplicate them. So in total right now of items recommended to be included for prioritization, there are 34 items. So I just wanted to clarify that. And so in this list where we've consolidated them, we, instead of listing it twice like you've seen, we just mentioned which commission recommended it.
If I could just make comment. Okay, so great. That maybe I missed a little bit in the presentation. To me, it putting the cart before the horse is what's kind of confusing me. When I see that new list and then the higher numbered items are the carryover items. Wow, I mean, it very confusing for me. If I saw that 1 to 30 were the current ones with number 12, number 17, number 31 crossed out as saying completed, and then we say 30 to 60 are new ones to fill in. Wow. To me,
I see these numbers are not an indication of priority. They were just listed in the large Excel because there were so many items. I've heard from council in the past, they wanted numerical so that they can reference, so that you're able to quickly reference which item we're all talking about. So these are just numbers for reference. They don't indicate priority at all.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Big job.
Thanks very much, Katie. And now I do have this process flow on my computer. So Katie, in your second box, you say late March, early April council meeting, council prioritizes all items suggested by council. That actually doesn't mean just the stuff that we suggest, right? That basically means a prioritization of all items.
It would be, so the way that we are presenting it tonight is, here are the items that we're recommending to include. And in attachment C, we have a listing of whether we recommend to include or not include. Mm-hmm. And so what I've presented this evening in the PowerPoint are all the items that are recommended for inclusion currently. However, so that would be prioritized unless council would like to take some out. And in addition, any other items that council would like to elevate to the prioritization process, we'll definitely add those.
Right. Let me ask you just very briefly, for the Lawrence Mini Park, you're putting that on something to prioritize, but that's actually a fully funded capital improvement project. So if we don't prioritize it, or we don't prioritize it high, what impact does that have on the project itself? Because it has a timeline, so what's the purpose of placing it here at this point?
I think it's a very complex process with a lot of nuances, and so we didn't want to not list all of the carryover items. Kind of to the point that Councilmember Willie made, we were trying to just really show which items are carryovers. It may be that by the time we get to the prioritization process, perhaps we point out which items may, well, I would say that it's still very helpful to know what's of high priority to council to make sure we were putting our efforts in the right way, in the right order. So I do think if Memorial Park continues to be a high priority for council in terms of top 10 and those updates, I think that's still helpful for staff to know. But to your point, whether or not we would just stop the project if it ended up being very low, I don't think that that's very likely. But it is important for staff to understand council's priorities.
Well, I'll just make an observation here before we go to Councilmember Moore. This is a relatively high priority item. It has been fully funded. It's a capital improvement project. So I would just reiterate the question as to why put it on a list. Because, from my own perspective, it's very challenging getting a significant park delivered on the eastern side of town. And so
it's definitely multi-year. And I think this also is a little bit in alignment with, in the past, we've tried to keep the CIP projects and work program projects separate because they do have their own trajectory and own approval process and all of that. And it gets a little complicated. But, nonetheless, we're happy to include it at council's direction. I
guess my point is, I've seen it slow down regardless of how it's prioritized, whether it's high. And, my fear is, if it doesn't happen to get prioritized so high, it could be used as, some kind of justification for natural tendencies, which I'd like to, make sure that if we have a fully funded capital improvement project, it's not, treated in that manner. And I understand, we have annexation issues. I was actually, on the phone with the LAFCO staff member yesterday and, the day before. So hopefully that gets in April. But at the same time, I would love to not see it become a staging area for our public works projects without notice to the public, right? Sometime in the next, year or calendar year, I should say. Okay, well, let me go to Councilmember Moore and then Vice Mayor Chow, then Councilmember Way.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So a little disappointed. I'm not seeing when I look at attachment C, something from the Fine Arts Commission included. I see 4 items and they all say not include, and I'm wondering if perhaps the liaison could ask for some other suggestions that we could review. I just want to mention one thing, and perhaps the city attorney can correct me, but I think for the Westport project that by the new calculations for public art, that about $300,000 was generated from that development. I believe that was the one that had such a high number. Would you happen to recall that, or anyone on staff have some recollection about that?
So I do not know the exact number. I might put Pew on the spot in case she does remember that number.
Okay. There was a project that had it was a little over $300,000, and it went to, I believe it went to the Fine Arts Commission to make some determination on that.
I just wanted to reiterate, probably not the Westport project. I know that a couple of items are going to the Fine Arts Commission. They haven't as yet. However, the current Fine Arts ordinance, it does not have the $100,000 cap that it used to in the past. So projects will be required to provide, I believe it's a 1% cap of the construction value. And so certainly we'll see more projects with a lot more artwork involved.
Yes, and I think that's going to be, it might be something that needs to have some additional policy about, because the last figure, and I wish I could recall what the project was 300,000. Maybe it was even from Valco. Maybe it was that project, but Valco came in under the previous calculation method. So if it was 1% of the new at a $3 billion cost, it would be a significant amount of money. So my concern is that for some of these projects which are getting bigger, especially given our housing element, that there's going to be a significant amount of money that needs to have some suggestions on where it will go with regards to art, and do we want to have some of those recommendations then come to council to hear what the Fine Arts Commission suggests be done with it or not. So two things. One, I'd like to see if there are some other suggestions from the Fine Arts Commission which could possibly make it onto the city work program. I'd appreciate it. We did have an item under Housing Commission, the programs for De Anza college students, explore solutions for homeless and housing insecure students. And I was wondering if we could perhaps have some update from I believe their president is now Patrick Aarons for Foothill De Anza Board of Trustees. And they have the bond, which is around, I believe, $890 million. So I'm curious if someone can reach out from staff to find out if they are intending to provide something for the students, because we can't build on their campus. They're pretty much an autonomous site with regards to what they build there. I'm a little disappointed that second story balconies was not included. I know that keeps coming up every time we see one of these balconies. We get frustrated. We say we need to change it. And if there's anyone on council that would like to see this item moved forward, I would welcome that, so that we stop revisiting the same thing every time it comes up. And could somebody from staff explain the work plan items that fall under CIP versus, I think, things like the balcony, the second story balcony ordinance would not be CIP. So how do we make those distinctions? And I think that'll help the public as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I wonder, when you're referring to the art-related fee, whether you might not be thinking about, if it's the Westport project, the park dedication fee, which was actually quite a sizable payment. But no, you're shaking your head. Okay, Vice Mayor Chow, you are next, followed by Councilmember Way. Actually, I see Katie with her hand raised. Katie, did you want to speak to any of the comments before we go to the Vice Mayor?
Yes, and I'll be brief. So for the fine arts, we did, one of the items that they suggested is the kind of art piece of the Cupertino store, art designed by community members to provide giveaways or at a store. We can definitely include a component like that. We do have a chamber store or the Cupertino store item being recommended to include, so we can include that component there. We just weren't comfortable including it as a completely different item. But if it's part of that ongoing effort, if that's the wish of the council, then we can include. We also were hesitant to say what the store would look like or what it might include before we brought it to council for that direction. So that was the reason why it's not included now. But if you would like to have it included as part of that store discussion, we can definitely incorporate that piece. And then also, De Anza college support. I think if the council wishes for us to add that item for prioritization, we can, and then follow up as you've suggested. The second story, so CIP projects are capital improvement projects. They involve construction. Public Works can probably give a better answer than I can. But if it involves construction of infrastructure, of buildings, of that nature, balconies and balcony ordinances are really policy documents, and they would become part of our municipal code. So that's just the difference in nature. It's not actual the project is not to construct anything.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Next, we have our Vice Mayor.
Okay, hi. So first, a few items to propose, things we will prioritize the next time. The first is integrated community engagement. As we have seen that through housing element, we are very disorganized in terms of how to engage our community. I have proposed to include that as part of the library commission. So it's library and community engagement. They could identify ambassadors in different social media to help us outreach. Also, there should be an integrated plan so that we don't start from scratch every time. So I hope Library Commission could help us come. They don't actually do the outreach, but they help integrate the resource. So next time we have a go-to place to review the engagement plan. Second proposal is hybrid meeting for commission meetings. I think we will go back to in-person in April, but I think hybrid meeting will enable a lot of seniors who can dial in from home and parents with young kids who can dial in from home. So we should continue to support that and hope we can figure out a way. And the third is a pre-approved ADU program. We approved a process last year, but there is only one pre-approved ADU unit that's less than 500 square feet now. San Jose has like 10 different vendors. And I see that city recently sent out notice to ask people to apply, but with only one choice, it's hard for people to join the pre-approved program. I think we need to finish. This is a project we didn't finish. We approved the process, but we didn't recruit the vendors. The fourth one is the visitor center. The Chamber of Commerce proposed to create a Cupertino visitor center. Cupertino is world well known as the center of Silicon Valley, but people who visit Cupertino have no idea where to go. And so now we are going to have a new economic development committee. I think this could be a project for that committee. And third and fifth is Team Commission. I see that both items proposed by Team Commission are not included, but I have two other ideas I hope they can consider. I hope the staff bring it to Team Commission. One is mental health survey and resources. I think that's top of every team's list. And the second is intergenerational engagement, possibly with age-friendly task force, so that seniors, teenagers, and there are activities that can involve people from a diverse age group. Another fifth one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth one is campaign to use public transit, bike path, or alternative parking to access library. For this one, Library Commission can work with Bike Path Commission to find out how to do this campaign. I think with the Ricknott Creek Trail, this will be a great campaign for us to have. Then I have comments on individual items. Should I go on or should I comment later?
No, let's go ahead and cut off there. I mean, unless and when you go back, we'll get back to you, Vice Mayor. When you go back on the existing items, focus on changes that you have, as opposed to plaudits or I guess if you want to take it off, it's a different story as well. But just focus on the changes. So let me go to Councilmember Way, and then I'll have a few comments before we head back through the cycle. Councilmember Way.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I've noticed that we have added a lot of items to it, and I just want to make sure that we know that can the staff provide, whether it's large, medium, small, how much time it's going to take, because it really doesn't make sense to put a lot of items on it where the staff doesn't have time to take it. I know we're going to prioritize it, but if we put a lot of them and prioritize them and then a lot of them don't get done, it doesn't make sense to me too. So I would really like to know how much time on each project that's already on the list that all our council members have suggested to add on the list, so that eventually we'll be able to scale it down to make sure that it's realistic, stretching it, but be realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Way. And I think that the voting procedure can certainly, kind of wash out prioritization and kind of some stuff goes to the top, some stuff goes to the bottom, right? Okay. So let me make my own comments here. As you can tell from my prior questions with regard to the Lawrence Committee, I think, again, this is a fully funded capital improvement project. I know that it's challenging. It's all the way on the far eastern side. We don't actually have it in Cupertino yet. I hope that that gets remedied, soon. I'm very optimistic that LAFCO will be taking it up in April. But I think we need a project manager for it. Again, it's fully funded. There's a lot of money for it. So what I would suggest is that we put into, if we're going to prioritize, we explicitly put into the language securing a project manager for this project. Because I want to make sure that, we don't get unhoused encampments, entrenched. People kind of scratch their heads and go, well, it's a couple few acres here. It's very convenient for this purpose and that purpose. I think we need to keep our eye on the ball and keep focused and go forward. Especially, again, we're not scrounging about for funding for this. I mean, the funding is there, the land is there. We're about to annex it. So that's my first comment. My second comment, I thought, the thing about the Cupertino store, I think we lack the ability to go ahead and allow people, locally and from out of town to have some Cupertino branded items. This isn't about giving them away. It's really just about going to a place where you can buy some, really. And I think that dovetails actually pretty nicely with something like a visitor center. And if we're talking about economic development, really that kind of gets to the core of awareness and branding for a city. So, I think it's something that, we could look at in terms of having different synergies. I think the Vice Mayor mentioned one of them with regard to a visitor center and having the new Economic Development Committee intersecting with it. I think a visitor center could intersect nicely with, Cupertino store. So I definitely agree with that. And another frequent request that I get from the public, and this is over years, it's not just recently, our students really want internship opportunities. And I think that maybe we can start small, but when I go around City Hall and I ask people, hey, what do you have as a project that's kind of lingering, right? That perhaps a student could do. There might be cataloging of various things, non-confidential, just work that needs to be done. That's nice and packetized. I mean, I think we could take it from a relatively low cost, low, staff overhead kind of perspective, and basically say an outreach to our various staff points. Hey, can you think of maybe 2 or 3, tasks, 2 or 3 projects that you could give to a student over the course of the summer? I mean, I think our city could come up with an internship program. And if consolidated with our council members, maybe each of us could, sort of in this, program get 1 or 2 interns helping us out. I can certainly do that, but I would have to sit down and think about, what are the various tasks that would need to be done. I think we could, kind of roll it into something very interesting as well. Maybe, tours of the city, we have the, we have the vehicles. I think we can contain it, nicely and also provide a nice service. The other part of it, I think, we have an economic development director and we do have a reformed economic development committee. I'm not necessarily saying that it should get into the committee's purview, but if we're interfacing with the business community, I think there's also, some potential opportunity, but I think once you talk about the private sector, it becomes a much more far-ranging and complicated, endeavor. I would say, if we wanted to packetize it as minimally as possible, I mean, just for my own part, I could probably devise a program where you had 1 or 2 people helping out. I did do that the first time I was mayor in 2018. And, basically just kind of, tasks that needed to get done, go to an event, take some pictures. But I mean, I think if we had a bit more of a formal program, we can not only provide that opportunity from the community and also to get the students engaged more and understanding what our public processes are about, but also get some things done. Frankly, we have really capable students, sometimes shockingly so. Over the years, you might hear like a science project done by a 5th grader and you're kind of scratching your head and going, wow, I can't believe that this is going forward, by someone who's, 11 or 12 years old. So I think kind of thought through if we were just to ask this simple question to staff and basically say, can you think of a project or 2 All right. I mean, and it's just a matter of bandwidth. You just, need someone who has sufficient amounts of intelligence to learn an app on a computer, or, do, a task that's just been kind of set aside. That if coordinated could help get some stuff done. I mean, I think that could be a really intriguing type of, service that we can provide with a win-win, hopefully. So that would be my addition. I would propose a possible city-driven internship program, for our students. And so, that's, the way I see this list right now, it's asking for suggestions. I think that the, other suggestions are really interesting and compelling, but I would just kind of focus in on that particular one. The other thought that I had to do kind of the other side of the age spectrum, and I really appreciated the comment with regard to the age-friendly task force and trying to find ways to coordinate. One way I think we could do it could also be tied with public communications and outreach, because I think we do have a very appreciably aging community, and if we were to tie that in with interaction with our students and the younger set, kind of in a manner that keeps it more neutral, kind of keeps it more issue, and particularly monetarily driven influences neutral. I think we can get some really good communicative mechanisms going within the city. So it's just a thought, and maybe we don't really have a department or particular people in our city that kind of focuses on the topic of aging or outreach to that particular demographic of the elderly. We do have a senior center. We have, of course, a Parks and Rec department and community development. But I think some of those dots haven't been quite connected in a way that we can be interacting. I mean, we did have a senior commission previously, and I guess the natural synergy would probably have been melding one of our teen mechanisms, either teen commission or one of the councils. Or one of the teen groups with the senior commission. But I know we have a committee right now, but we no longer have that commission. So just some thoughts in terms of where the needs are. I think those it's really good to communicate, but I'd really like to be able to, as a city, set forth real value that's really not kind of like ulterior agenda, or I don't like this particular thing or person. I think just kind of going forward and trying to figure out, what are the needs? I hear all sorts of, comments from some of the elderly community. I have no idea how to use a Zoom, function on a meeting. How to get even access to the meeting materials? I mean, I think if we were to create a mechanism for that kind of outreach and communication on a broader basis, it would be really helpful for the various parts. And I tend to think, that energy of, not just the volunteering spirit, but, within our more student-oriented, demographic, that could be put to really good effect there. So those are my comments. Just some thoughts. I'm not providing a tangible suggestion with regard to this latter one, but if I were to put something forward, it would really be more along lines of kind of dovetailing off the idea of an internship program, with the hope that perhaps somebody in the city could identify ways we can synergize our student population with the elderly population. So Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is raised, and so is Councilmember Moores. So let's go back to you, Vice Mayor Chow. I think you had indicated that you wanted to go over some items of existing.
Yeah, okay. So I am using attachment C, so my numbers is from attachment C. For item number 2, Vision Zero, I think I would like that to be merged with item 4, that's potentially to include potentially near miss studies. Item 4 was recommended for not to be included. And then under Fine Arts Commission, how come I have another item? Anyway, the festival is around, okay, that's number 6, yeah. Under Fine Arts Commission, festival that is run by Fine Arts Commission, I clarified that with the chair. She is indicating that she means Visual and Performing Art Festival, which Cupertino doesn't have. However, this one does include a lot of staff time, and I recommended to her that to find other nonprofit to host this kind of festival, and then maybe Fine Arts Commission can assist when she finds that nonprofit. And then for number 5 and scholarship for young artists, and number 7, community grants for fine art. And I clarified with her, I think she meant scholarship to produce public art. I think Cupertino doesn't have a lot of public art. And with the potential visitor center, I'm hoping there could be photo-worthy public art in Cupertino. People can come, take a photo, post on social media, and here is where I've been in Cupertino, and possibly a grant to support this kind of public art. And then maybe young artists could also get involved in producing. There are some simple public art like paving on the ground or on a wall that could make interesting public art with low cost too. And then as for art store, I think that Cupertino store is a great idea, but we need art on all these store items. So I would like to assign Cupertino store to art commission, and fine art commission can help come up with art designs or even solicit artwork representing Cupertino to be put on the Cupertino store items. We don't want those just to have the Cupertino logo. We want them to have some colorful art representing Cupertino. So I think we can assign the store to fine art to help us come up with what to include in Cupertino store. And then number 10, programs for De Anza College students. I remember we had a home share program so that the college students can share a home with seniors with an agreement to maybe provide some housework or assistance for a reduction in rent. But that program has been stopped. It was supported by Catholic charities with Santa Clara City, but that maybe it's due to COVID, it stopped. I'm hoping that could be continued. And I also am curious where the students who enroll in De Anza College but are homeless are coming from, because community college is supposed to be for students in the community. If they are coming from a different community, what makes them choose to come to De Anza even when they have no housing option? Why they couldn't choose a community college in their own home area? I'm curious about that. And I think we need to understand the cause of this kind of housing insecure students. And number 11, city plan to end homeless. This is in response to the county plan to end homeless. I checked the county website. They actually have quite a bit of program for homeless. I hope that our plan leverage the county plan and I would like to get data from the county on how many Cupertino residents, workers are being served by the county programs, because I keep getting the feedback that the county doesn't really provide service to us. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I hope the plan to end homeless provide that information. And homeless jobs program. I think that if the pilot is successful, I don't know why we are not including that. However, I also find out the county has its own program, very similar. It's also for homeless. It's called Creating Employment Pathways by the county, and they have a goal in providing jobs for 170 people, so that many of them could work 30 plus hours per week. And then they also have programs to help. Many of them homeless do work, but they don't earn enough to rent. So they have pathways to help them get higher paying jobs so they can earn their living. County already has a program. I wonder how we can maybe work with the county to leverage their resources with our homeless jobs program, so we are not working in a silo. Maybe we can enhance each other's work. And number 13, create plans for the city to purchase or lease very low-income rental housing to include seniors and developmentally disabled. This is not included by the staff because it says the city is progressing with existing site. I see that this was on the city work program, but the item was never on the housing commission agenda. Maybe this is something the city is already doing. Maybe it's making progress. Let's put that on the housing commission agenda so that they are involved. And I hope that as a policy, every city council approved work program item related to any commission should be placed on their work program, and any operational item that may be from a previous work program should also be placed on any of the commission agenda so that they can help provide feedback and help the public provide a venue for the public to provide input. Number 15, artwork.
Vice Mayor Chow, are you planning on going through a majority of the entirety of the list? Because I do know that the list is nearly 70 items long. And
I do have comment for, I'm only commenting on things that I'm revising, right?
Right, but do you have a time estimate for how long this might take? Because, you know,
I have 11 more items.
You have 11 more items? Okay, if you could try to, you know, summarize without expounding too much, maybe half a minute for each of your remaining items, that would be really,
Okay.
I think, you know, appreciated. And the other part about it is that, you know, feel free to commit your comments to an email to our staff member that I think can get reflected in, you know, the next iteration that's described here. So for example, you know, I'll just go over number 13. You know, one of the things that you indicate in terms of creating plans for the city to purchase or lease very low or low-income rental housing units. I think those are very well intentioned, but if the staff comment is that, you know, quote, the city is progressing with existing sites for development of affordable housing. The city has funding and staffing challenges if it is to consider this new proposal. I think one of the things that we pragmatically run into is the ability to put it on for the reason that staff is indicating that it would be a challenge to include. So I think, you know, it's nice to hear your thoughts on it. And I agree with you in terms of the well-intentioned portion of it. But I think if you're going to, you know, expound on something, maybe speak to the idea that, you know, pragmatically, how do we include it in there if our own staff is basically saying this is going to be, you know, this might be resource prohibitive. So just a suggestion. And if you have 11 more, I appreciate, you know, maybe wrapping up within 5 to 10 minutes on them.
Okay.
Thanks.
Should Councilmember Moore go first, or do you want me to finish?
Well, I mean, if you can finish in that time frame, please feel free. I mean.
So number 15 is the artwork at the library and the Art Day. And that one, the Library Commission is proposing something that's expanding the current art display because our library is really doesn't have a lot of art. I love Saratoga Library where as you walk in, you'll see an art gallery. And I think this, even though staff says it's operational, I don't think operational does what the commission is in. So I hope this item includes both library and fine arts commission to look at how we can include more art in and outside of the library area. Number 17, DOLA. I think it's on our work program this year, but then I know that with staff challenging, and then I understand they are understaffed. However, we have a lot of enthusiastic community members who are willing to put in their time. So I propose to form a task force as a subcommittee of Parks and Rec Commission. So 2 Parks and Rec Commission members and plus community members as a task force to identify new sites, and I think they will need to make rules for these new sites. And the challenge this year is because in Joliman Park, the dog off-leash area is close to other athletic field. But there are other parks, for example, here in Linda Vista Park. This area doesn't have any other athletic field. So I think a trial in this area could start right away. You don't need to wait until you collect data from Joliman Park. And then for Memorial Park, I think this part that's in right behind Queenland is also far away from the softball field. Maybe that could be the first trial for that. But I understand the staffing challenges, so I'm proposing to form a task force so that the community members can help us out, and the staff just need to facilitate the meeting. And the next one, number 34, volunteer engagement strategy under the Public Safety Committee. And staff says revamping block leader program will do that. I hope that that's put this on the Public Safety Commission agenda, including the revamping block leader program and neighborhood watch, so that they can help provide input to that process, so that there is some visibility to that. And the number 36, privately owned the EV charger to explore. I would like the commission to explore that. The staff made some comments, but it really does not include the privately owned EV charger exploration. And number 38, and I think this exploration probably shouldn't need any staff time. It's for the commission to spend time to explore. So I hope it doesn't take up staff time. Number 38, Climate Victory Garden pilot expansion. The same thing, we have a pilot, but how to do future expansion. If it's under operational, there will be no expansion. So I think this needs to be on the commission agenda so that they can help identify more sites for pilot. And I hope that we rely on our volunteers to do more of the work. Number 46, Lawson Middle School Bikeway. This is one item out of the many walk audit items. I asked the Bike Path Commission, I think chair or vice chair. This item was never, was not recommended by them. They didn't even know about this item. I think if, I would like the Bike Path Commission to review all the walk audit items, and if some of them need additional work that cannot be covered by the existing allocation for implementing walk audit item, they should recommend the prioritize them and recommend that to the council. Let's not take it one by one. That's not fair to the other projects. And number 49, Cupertino store. As I said, this should be assigned to Fine Arts Commission for implementation. And number 50, safe gun storage ordinance. I wonder how many gun owners are there in Cupertino. Do we really have time for this? That's probably not many people need. Number 52, senior strategy is already on this year's agenda, but I understand the staffing challenge. There hasn't been much progress made, but this is a very important item. So I would like to also propose to form a task force as a subcommittee so that we can include knowledgeable volunteers such as age-friendly task force. Or
you're going to need to wrap up, Vice Mayor.
Yeah.
I think you've been more than generous with the time here. So we can all see what you wrote for 53 and 60. I'm going to go on to Councilmember Moore at this point. And you can go ahead and commit your written comments to staff as well. Councilmember Moore.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. And I do think procedurally that if we're going line by line, that all of council should be allowed to provide input for each one. And it wasn't my understanding that we would be doing that this evening. I just want to going back to the public art issue, the municipal code has changed so that we are getting more funding for art from these various projects that we have. So for instance, the project I was thinking about, it was actually public storage. It was a $27 million project, and the in lieu of fees ended up being $338,000. If they provided artwork, it would have been $270,000. So it went to the Fine Arts Commission on November 22nd, 2021, and they decided to accept the in lieu of payment. And what I'm not personally clear on is what happened to that money and what decisions were made with regards to that for what public art would happen. Would it be public art somewhere else in the city? And so I'm thinking that we might possibly, if you consider the Art in Unexpected Places project, which was a $10,000 mural out at, I believe it was Blackberry Farm. We could have, like 34 such murals with this amount of funding. So because we have projects like Westport, which could potentially be a $50 million project, perhaps it's even more, that would end up providing about $600,000 of in lieu of fees. This is a large amount of money, and I'm thinking that we might want to work with the Fine Arts Commission and come up with some policy around when the dollar amount is that high. Do we want to have some interaction back and forth with council and approval, which I'm kind of leaning towards at this moment, because it's so much money, and I'm hearing these requests for art perhaps in the library or in other locations. So I think that because these fees are so high, that we need to actually start inquiring as to where the money's going, and consider some policy about where the cutoff is. Is it $15,000 where we want to have it come to council and have a discussion, or some other number? But I don't think because we have these big projects moving forward, I don't think we want to just ignore this and not have a discussion about it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. I think at this point, given the volume of comments, what I would recommend is that staff take this back, and I think that Katie, your next step in this process would be to generate a new list. Is that correct, based upon our feedback this evening?
Right, so that would consist of the list I gave in the presentation of what we recommended to include, plus the items that have been suggested for addition.
Right, and how do you plan on treating the comments on, various items? So just to, indicate one, if there was a suggestion to combine one item with another, I mean, what's your planned treatment?
That one in particular, in the staff comments, we said that this near miss could be included in Vision Zero. So that seems in alignment with what we were suggesting anyway. But I think it would help in terms of, I know that there were a lot of different ideas. I don't know if that's the will of the full council or majority of council, any clarity, or if the desire is, as long as one person suggested it, we'd at least like to look at it. That's fine. I just want, like you're mentioning, just some clarity would be helpful.
Right. No, that's fair. That's fair to send it back to us on that point. I did hear things that I would agree with conceptually. There are some things that I could live without, but in terms of what the pleasure of the group would be, I'm a little bit concerned that it may create a bit of a logistical difficulty to get through every single one of these suggestions to see what the guidance would be. So let's put it this way: we have a list of items. We have some additions to the list. Under your own rubric, Katie, you have include and not include, and we have some suggestions as to, how to treat some of this logistically. So I would suggest we do this. If you or another staff member could go through with these items, possibly create another column that incorporates some of the suggestions that were made this evening, right? And then, connects those suggestions with, the items as described. Then I think we can come up with a new document with a new list that we could then apply the vote. And the next time you see this, the next time you see this item coming back to us, I think you were looking at not next week, but the first meeting in April, correct? Okay, so that gives us enough time, a few weeks to absorb some of this. I would suggest that for the sake of clarity, that the individual council members, do use you as an interface point. And of course, you're not kind of consolidating comments and comparing them outside of the contours or the context of a public meeting. But if people have clarifications, or for example, Vice Mayor Chow, you had a voluminous number of comments on a number of various items, you can provide, that text to Katie, who could serve as a point for providing those comments in a consolidated document. Does that work? I mean, because I think with regard to other comments, that actually does give other council members, as Councilmember Moore was pointing out, the opportunity to provide that input, but again, without creating any kind of serial communication outside of the context of a public meeting, because when it comes back, it would be the next publicly noticed meeting where these thoughts are consolidated. And then I think the task would be upon our city council to make sure that we do our homework, just go over these various items and suggestions and see how you feel, right? Because this is a very significant amount of commentary, and I'm not going to ask anybody, certainly even to take 2 or 3 items and not properly digest them, let alone the majority of some 70 odd 60 odd items. So that's what I would suggest. I would suggest you take the comments, give us a cutoff date that's reasonable. We're kind of in a busy stretch of March. Next week is our third sequential Tuesday with a meeting. Maybe give people till the end of next week, to provide their commentary, and then see what we can do about a consolidated document. I do ask that my fellow council members don't add items. Okay, don't take items out of whole cloth and kind of put them on here. I think it's fair to have had that opportunity, and if you just have a burning desire to have something that's just so brilliant that will kind of like solve things for all time, a la Douglas Adams, just maybe bring it to the next council meeting. But I mean, that would be my suggestion for how to proceed in this process. And I do see both Councilmember Willie and our city manager Jim Troop have their hands raised. Let me go to the staff representative first. City Manager Troop.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to state, and it's sort of the obvious, I guess, but I'd be working with Katie on this. And if we have any need for clarification, we can reach out to that council member that made that discussion point to get clarity on any of these items to make sure that we have it correct.
Right. Okay. So I think that's fair. And I do see Councilmember Way's hand is raised as well. Let's go to Councilmember Willie and then Councilmember Way.
Yeah, I appreciate the amount of thought you put into your suggestion. With the list, what I would toss out though is that with a list that is this big, we can spend countless time talking about items that don't wind up ranking high enough to be on the list. So I would toss out, in the interest of boiling this down to the most important items, if we used your ranking, 13 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s, and then those would be the ones that we would then start spending our time on. It's not to say somebody can't say, hey, I really want this one. Well, then give it a 5. But 70 items, I mean, we can spend so much time, as opposed to let's get to the finish line and then refine those ones, change the objective or massage it or something. But wow. So I'll just toss that out. Just my comment.
No, I appreciate that, Councilmember Woolley. But I think, as an initial step, we need to have kind of a sufficiently vetted by each of us and agreed upon group of items, right? So that we have enough time to consider, all of the various suggestions. And if as a group, one person is really wedded to an idea, but the other four thinks, well, okay, this is not, for example, even a priority, for the other four, as a topic, then I think, that gives us, a good, direction for that particular item. I think that we need another session in order to consolidate these comments. And from what I'm hearing of your suggestion right now, maybe start applying those, rankings of 1, 3, or 5, or the point system. I'm willing to go do that, but I just don't know if we have a, kind of an agreed upon baseline palette of topics. And I don't want this to balloon to 100, certainly. But at the same time, I think we would be benefited by, given the time that we do have, another iteration based upon our comments. So if you're suggesting, Councilmember Woolley, that we go back and take this list and start voting on it, I'd be happy to entertain, a motion to that effect. But I do think that we do have, comments. For my own part, I'd like to see, possibly, my single suggestion in there. But I'm happy to go with the will of the group here. This, like as you say, it's a fairly comprehensive list. Councilmember Way.
Okay, I'm going to make it short. I do agree with Councilmember Willie, and I agree with Mayor Paul, and I agree with Council Moore, because I didn't realize that we are supposed to make comments on a lot of the things in detail, like Vice Mayor Chow did. And so I happen to think the gun ordinance is an important issue because we just have a gunshot incident by McDonald Homestead. So I would like to take Mayor Paul's suggestion that we get into some input to each item. But how do we do that? I'm a little confused. Are we going to send it to the staff, or is it going to be a next meeting when we're transparent and say in the meeting? Or I'm a little confused on the process.
Under my suggestion, I would say that you would send it to staff by the end of next week by email, but you won't communicate it to the other council members, so that we can have a new consolidated document that has input from each of us on a level basis. So then that following meeting would be a matter of coming up with the list of items that we will be voting on, at which point we can then start prioritizing and identifying which ones to proceed with in the following fiscal year.
Okay.
Okay. Vice Mayor Chow.
A question and a comment. A question is, if everyone didn't think we should comment on these items, what do you think this study session is for?
Well, I think at the end of this, we
I thought we
have the
comment, so next time the staff can revise it, then we can prioritize it, right? That's what I thought the process is. Because if we don't comment with the revision, we would like to see how do we prioritize.
I think that's fair. And I think it dovetails, with what I'm saying.
People are thinking what I'm doing is outlier. I thought this, I totally didn't understand. But then I think it's true that I have some comment on each because of the staff comment on including or not including, or something is operational or not. So this is, yeah. So a lot of it is in response to that. And so I will send my list to the staff. And I would also like, I think Councilmember Moore, everyone made some good comments. And so I wonder how can we concur with each other's comments so that staff can come back with a more consolidated list. So is there a way we can submit our comment and I can say, oh, I agree with Councilmember Moore, and maybe the staff will the comment, and then we can provide the say, oh, we agree with this or that. And
It's a good question. I mean, I know that our city attorney has his hand raised. And so Chris, did you want to speak to that? I think, let me just encapsulate what my suggestion was. And if you think that it's a violation of the Brown Act or some other, requirement, just of course, I think that's probably why you have your hand up. But if each of us sends our comments to Katie and it gets consolidated in a document and published a few days before our next meeting, does that constitute a serial communication of some kind? And so would we then have to then relegate that documentation to be received at our next public meeting as opposed to publish materials in advance of it?
So, so I think some kind of aggregated. So certainly the one-way communications with Katie are fine. I think some kind of aggregated summary of that information probably. I would recommend not identified by specific council members with specific proposals, but circulated in a publicly available agenda packet in advance of the meeting, I think would comply with the Brown Act, and obviously that's going to be more efficient than receiving the information at the meeting and actually trying to process it in real time.
Right. I mean, I think it certainly complies with the spirit of trying to keep it open and communicative, and not having decisions that aren't aired out. This is a matter of trying to get all of these comments out there so that we have informative public discussion about it. So appreciate that, City Attorney Jensen. And so let's go. And to your comment, Vice Mayor, yeah, well, thank you for doing the homework. That's great. I mean, you and I, of course, contemplated this process a number of years ago, and it all started with kind of reforming the idea behind putting every of the work plans for the various commissions and committees in lockstep with council. So maybe we can say, you have a bit of a jump on, kind of an understanding of the process, and leave it at that. But also, I do want to provide the opportunity for everybody kind of, just on your comments alone, it would be good to, just state them a bit to get a sense of what the, the group will is. So Katie, your hand is raised again. Did you want to speak to any of the points raised here?
Yeah, I just want to kind of, based on your recommendation, Mayor Paul, I wanted to just clarify what I would plan to do to make sure that we're all on the same page, and then how we could potentially move forward at our next session and the first meeting in April. So by the end of next week, first, what I would do is I'd take our attachment C list. I would add distinctive new item proposals that we've heard here today. Not so much the comments on the other items yet, but if there was like a brand new item being proposed, like the discussion on city buildings and properties, or the visitor center, or the intern program. So I would add these items to it for everyone to kind of comment on. And then could I then ask, like, create a column for each, for you to fill out, to send just to me, if include yes, no, and then any additional commentary you have, so that it can be made on each item if you so wish to do so. And I think that way I'll have clarity on what items you want to be included in prioritization from the council, and that we can still move forward with prioritization at the April meeting, where all this commentary is disclosed.
This is how I envision this. I don't think that you have a deliverable to us before we send something back to you. I think the purpose for this meeting was to provide input on this initial list. And I think that there's a follow-up required here in order for us to consider, because it just, spans the entire breadth of city activity, the various input points from the public and our colleagues. So I think it's just one way. I mean, for my own part, I doubt that I'll even communicate any additional points, because I feel that when I look at, the spectrum of things, I've relayed what I found important. And my hope is that, that's also echoed by, the majority, if not all, of council. But I would also say that we should be very modest about how we treat this, communication to you, in the sense that we have had the public meeting, but if there is, some kind of addenda information to provide, this is not an opportunity to go through all you know, all of the enumerated items and you know, provided kind of a semi-encyclopedic, you know, detailed feedback, you know, irrespective of, you know, everything else in a vacuum of, you know, what our own kind of, you know, stream of consciousness of thoughts are. It's really just a matter of being able to clarify to you by the end of next week, based upon, you know, what our what our feedback would be if we were basically saying to ourselves, okay, we have the opportunity to kind of keep this discussion complete. It's an addendum of our current discussion here, with the understanding that we were going to come back anyway with a, you know, with a new list, and hopefully this, you know, list can be useful to us in the sense that it actually reflects the comments, you know, and the feedback that was provided by our colleagues here. So you know, my request basically to the rest of council is, yes, feel free to communicate with Katie by the end of next week. But don't feel obligated, and certainly please do not, you know, go through every single one of the items and, you know, kind of weave things out of whole cloth in terms of reasons. This is just this is just a time for us to wait for that new documentation to come in and have it consolidated. If you happen to think of things, you know, in the meantime that would really add value to the, you know, discussion, or to clarify a point that you made here, then I think that's a good opportunity. But, you know, please give our staff the consideration of the fact that they've done a lot of work on this. You know, this has been, you know, a fairly detailed meeting, as a lot of our meetings tend to be. And, you know, let's, you know, trust the process, so to speak, and get the next iteration of this document forward so that we can, you know, make a consideration of prioritization. So that would be my suggestion. Be modest about your email. Okay, that's my suggestion. Now, Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised, and then Vice Mayor Chow as well, and Councilmember Moore.
Okay, Mayor Paul, I'm a little concerned about what the agenda item says, and I think that there's kind of a simple way that we can address it, because it is an action item. And the recommended action is that we adopt fiscal year 2022 to 2023 council goals and select city work program items for prioritization. And I think one way that we could actually have a motion and a second and get a vote on this would be if we, you know, agree to adopt the council goals, which we saw, and that we essentially say that our items for prioritization, which we're going to do at some other time and drop items off and whatnot, it is just that the items are the entirety of what we added to the list, which was recommended, something like that. And that way we've addressed the action item that we have, and we can then remove items from the list, as you're saying already, with Katie. But I feel like we need to address this recommended action and kind of just close this item up.
Well, the recommended action doesn't bind us with regard to what we do. I think it's really more along the lines of the subject, which is considering fiscal year 22 to 23 council goals and proposed city work program items. Now, if you're suggesting that we go forward in colon, you know,
oh no,
items tonight.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. I'm just saying that or say, you know, I think when I look, but I understand the word consider doesn't sound like we need to really do anything. Oh, we considered them, but it does say recommended action is that we adopt them. So I guess if you just want to read it as we were merely supposed to consider it rather than take an action, then I question why it's under ordinances and action items, I suppose.
Well, our action could be directing staff as described. So, you know, this is simply recommended action. It doesn't constrain the boundaries of what we can do. I would say the boundaries of what we can do are under the subject, which is a consideration of those council goals. Right.
Okay, then Mayor Paul, perhaps the recommended action should have the word consider adopting. Maybe.
Well, no, I think your concern is
is that we're supposed to do something.
I think your concern is covered by the word recommended, okay? So it's a recommended action from our staff. That doesn't mean that we are confined within the boundaries of that recommended action.
Good enough. As long as we haven't led anyone to think we're going to have some sort of action here where we are eliminating or adding and having a set confined list for prioritization, then we're good.
This is fair. And I'm not going to belabor this by, repeating this every time, like, public comments, 3 minutes and raise your hand. But I think this is a very important point. The subject is what we consider. The recommended action is something that our hardworking staff puts together right after they, go through it. But that doesn't constrain your decision, right? That's just the recommended action by your staff. You can make an action that is based upon the subject, right? The subject, you have to stay within the boundaries of the subject, not the boundaries of the recommended action, is what I'm saying. So don't feel that the recommended action, if you're deviating it from it somehow, that is a violation of anything. I mean, that's really, it's the start of a conversation. Just like, when I call for a motion and the default motion is the recommended action, well, the nature of Rosenberg's rules or Robert's rules or whatever rules of order we're using is such that we can morph that. We can morph that action, right? So that's, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to, kind of belabor the point or anything, but we're not required to adopt these council goals at this time. We can provide more, and I think it's a good idea, given our input, to go ahead and, bring this back for another session. And, hopefully, that's something that you can agree with as well. Because, I'd be happy to entertain a motion if you wanted to bring one forward, Councilmember Moore, as the default motion under the recommended action. I'm happy to do that and see if we can get a second and move forward in that manner. Okay, not hearing you bring forth that motion. Let me go to Vice Mayor Chow. And at this point, Vice Mayor Chow, barring a motion being brought forth, I would propose one. Vice Mayor Chow, do you have a motion to set forth?
You can propose. I have a question in terms of process. So.
Oh, okay, why don't you ask your process-oriented question right now, and then we can.
So, for senior strategy, for example, it's priority number 4 this year, but staff, due to staffing constraint, didn't make much progress. But I see that other cities use task force with a lot of volunteers, and they are able to make a lot of progress. So I'm proposing to form a task force with age-friendly folks. For example, so I'm trying to clarify how a better implementation next year could get us more done with less staff support. So how should I integrate that into where or when should we include this more finer direction on an item?
Yeah, I would, very respectfully, I would say that in my experience, it's a matter of putting in the elbow grease yourself and getting done what needs to get done. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these items require work, they require strategizing. And if you're willing to, do that work and, effectuate those strategies, then that's really what, so for example, let me finish. Let me finish this point. So for example, you could ask for a task force to be formed, but if there's no one coordinating that task force or creating the deliverable for that task force will not necessarily do what you think it can do. Okay. And so typically what ends up happening is that, the work of a thing, you end up relegating to staff. And if the staff member is not there and you need that staff member there for the task force, then the task force is essentially going to be ineffectual. But if you basically commit to the task force and you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to be consolidating all of this and I'll put forward a professional, public consumption ready report at the end of this. If you commit to that, then yes, you can, probably, short circuit and get that work done. but if you're not, if you don't have a plan in mind for that, then I think you just create more structure, right? And you don't necessarily.
What I mean is a task force, we need the staff to help coordinate, and then the volunteers would help produce content or the report. And then how do I know whether I have the blessing of the other council members so that we can implement this item differently next year?
Right. Well, that's about track record, right? I mean, that's just, I would say it's a matter of, if you feel
because this is number 4 priority this year. All we had is a survey so far, which the Parks and Rec Commission was not involved in making. I don't know who was involved in making, and the age-friendly task force was not involved in making either. So I'm hoping to have a more efficient process to get people who are knowledgeable about this involved.
Right. I will say in this kind of situation, you do need your point person on, just very similarly to how us.
Same thing for DOLA.
Right.
Yeah.
For any project, really. I mean, at the end of the day, if, recently I had an issue with, trash along the waterways and highways, right? I mean, if you need to be the person that pushes and asks for, a, grant proposal being made, and if it doesn't happen, do you pick up the phone and call Caltrans or talk to people to, get the water district involved? Then you go and be that person, right? I mean, that's essentially what I'm saying, right? And if you don't see the staff person that is going to coordinate for you the task force work that you're identifying, then that's going to be an issue, right? And so, I think the question you have to ask yourself at that point is, am I willing to go and do that? Am I going to take that and get that done? With all respect, I mean, I think it's good in concept to think about all these good ideas, but at the same time, to really effectuate it, I'm not trying to talk down, I'm not trying to condescend, but the reality of the situation is, there's a set amount of work that needs to be done to get a lot of these projects done. And so, if you don't identify the person that will do, those particular bottleneck points, and you don't take it upon yourself to do it, then it's not going to get done. That's the best thing I can say with regard to that. City Manager Troop, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I am concerned, anytime we look at, be it a different subset of a group or something, it's like you had said, Mayor, it does require additional staff time. And this is a very, very large list right now. And even if we do a subset to essentially try to help staff, it actually does add more work to the staff. And this list that, we're trying very hard to get through it. I think if we're just adding more, even like the Vice Mayor was saying, that really does take additional staff time. If something gets a hiccup, then staff's involved. There's just a lot of different ways that it's really going to impact staff. It may not sound like it does, but it will. And I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager Troop. And I will say, having gone through 2 or 3 iterations of this, there are built-in mechanisms to kind of curtail, that list in terms of staff bandwidth, and those are proposed here, right? I mean, along the way, it's a matter of trying to figure out how long a particular project would take, and there are prioritizations. There are kind of bandwidth assignments there within the process flow. Councilmember Willie, do you mind if I make a motion prior to your comment, or did you want to bring forward a motion at this time?
I was actually, after hearing from the city manager, I was going to say, let me make my motion of what I said before.
Okay.
This is a big task. There's too many items. I make a motion that each of us on the council rank. We get 13 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s, and by next Tuesday, we each send our list to Katie, and the ones that don't rank, let's not deal with them anymore. Let's not tie up city staff if they don't come out with sufficient support. There's no reason city should be spending time rewording them. So that would be my motion. Let us go ahead and rank them and have a smaller set for the next time we deal with this.
Okay, fair enough. I actually see that as, and Katie, Jim, or other staff, let me know if you disagree with this assessment. I see that as the staff recommendation, essentially, that we proceed with the current list and asking for ranked prioritizations. So Councilmember Willie, does your list encompass everything that is on the proposed items, irrespective of whether the staff recommendation is to include or not include?
I've glanced through. I think everything's there. If something is not there, there's two choices. Either one, the individual councilman could add it at the bottom with whatever his ranking is. Let's say add an airport. Okay, and I'm going to give it a 5. Where does it fall within what we discuss next time?
Councilmember Willie, let me ask you this from a process perspective. This kind of write-in voting system, how are the other council members to know about that council member's interest in that particular item without having another iteration come back?
Yeah, I would just say that, life's not perfect, and, it'll come next time. And if somebody next time should say they want to, that'll be our first ranking. And then next time the list comes back,
okay,
a couple write-ins, and now we go back and rank those that we've got. We know the ones that fell off, so let's move up the ones that we're most passionate about.
So start voting. Essentially, the staff recommendation with ranked choices with the ability to write in some preferred votes for each.
Get from point A to point B. Yeah.
Anyone like to second Councilmember Woolley's motion? I see Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised.
No, I have question about how this could be done, because like fine arts, the art store should actually be combined with Cupertino store, but now it's 2 separate items. So I don't know how do I rank that.
Right, under Councilmember Woolley's motion, you would basically write in a separate amalgamation, like a separate line saying, I want to combine these and I vote for this and I place my points in this bucket here. So let me clarify.
I will not be able to vote that.
I'm sorry, what's that? Oh yeah, right. Other people won't be able to vote for it, but as Councilmember Woolley was pointing out, this will come back to us. We would see it, and then we could have a discussion about whether prioritizations might change the next time it's in front of us publicly, after it's been consolidated based upon the work that staff would do to make that new that new document indicating the rankings. So Councilmember Willie, you're saying 13 ones, 13 threes, 13 fives. I take it 5's the greatest weight, correct?
Yeah, that's what last time.
That's what we did last time, right? And so the items with the most points, so to speak, are the ones that ended up getting the highest rating.
Yep.
Okay, I will second your motion, Councilmember Willie. And you had indicated a time by next Tuesday. I would can I get a friendly amendment to that to make it by next Friday? Because next
Absolutely.
Tuesday is the council meeting, and so
Yep.
Okay. So this is essentially the default with the idea that we start voting on what's in front of us here, including things that just all the items, all 69 of the items, and if you have some other iteration or some other idea, write it in, and then that will get consolidated. So let me go to
proposed today. So would they be included or not?
You could include it in what you write in, and so the document is the most recent attachment C. I believe we got it as a desk item over email, and it will be updated in the public record if it hasn't already been.
So it's like the council proposed item gets the lowest priority because the council proposed items don't even get included.
At this point, possibly, yeah. I mean, if you have a council proposed item that you want to write in as you're describing it and assign it, for instance, a 5 or 3 or 1.
And also, we are ranking items that belong to different departments. Maybe we would rank, and then some department get 0 items. And so how do you balance the load?
Right. I mean, we're not forcing a distribution under this motion. That's true. Everything could theoretically fall under, you know, all your 5s. I don't know if any of these. I don't know if any of these fall under, like, if there are 13 items under one particular commission or department.
This is the reverse, because in the past, usually the council proposed item first. And now we are having commissioners propose item, the staff proposed item, the council proposed items don't even get added.
Yeah, we have a revisitation, and this does put us a step ahead from what my original proposal was or what your proposal was. It does get us to a point where, you know, we actually have a larger list and an initial ranking system. So
Can I make a substitute motion?
you're free to bring forward a substitute motion. Let me call on first Katie and then Councilmember Moore in case there are comments on this motion here. Katie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to confirm that, reiterate what the mayor has mentioned, that I get the point of perhaps the new items that council members would be writing in may not be visible until the next meeting, but since we're going to almost essentially have an opportunity to re-rank at that next meeting, I think that they'll have an opportunity to then also be included. I think Councilmember Willie's goal here is to try to know where to focus energy. So maybe we can just lop off some of the ones at the bottom so we don't even spend a lot of time fine tuning them. And so I definitely understand that point. So I just wanted to reassure you that even new items that get added in this process can definitely be re-ranked by the full council at the prioritization meeting.
All right, thank you, Katie. Councilmember Moore, did you have a comment at the motion on the table before I go back to Vice Mayor Chow, who wants to bring forward a substitute motion?
Yes. So Councilmember Willie, we'll end up with 39 ranked items out of the potential group of 69. And then if we were to take the recommendations from city staff, which had a kind of a cold list, that was a group of 34. So I just want to make sure that those numbers are what you're expecting, that we're going to end up with 39 ranked items. Is that correct?
Not correct, in the sense that I'm going to put my 39 with 13 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s. Your 39 are going to be different.
Right. But it's just 39.
First chop off. Did any of the items that are on the list not get any support? Those now have fallen off. So now everything that got something is now on the list. We've now pushed off anything that got nothing, and any that got written in response to Vice Mayor's. Let's say that she writes in one. All she has to do is use one of her 5s for her write-in. That doesn't mean when we rank them at the next time, she doesn't have to give that write-in a number 5, but by her giving it a 5, it now has substance on our list that that city staff is going to bring us and say, based on your initial ranking, this is what we got. Let's say Councilman said the senior strategy is going to get a number 5 from her and a number 3 from me. It's going to, move to the top. The 5 from Vice Mayor Chow's write-in is still going to be on the list. So now we still really do have this. Now we all go off and do our final ranking, and we all say, what are our 13 5s? And then those are going to be at the top of the list. And so, although it's not a perfect situation, I think it's going to get us from point A to point B without having staff spend time on the ones that we realize there's limited resources of staff time, and that we can't have 69 items. And so we just want to get from point A to point B without overworking them on items that, you know, we just don't feel that we have resources for some of those items. So why keep them, you know, running around on them? So
Okay.
that's the motion that's out there, and it's not perfect, but.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Willie. And through the mayor, I think probably my preference would be that we continue this item and allow the additional items, if there are even items from the public, that they would get added onto the list, and then we go back and prioritize it, having all of the extra items. That would be my preference, but I see that we've already got a motion, and I guess I can go along with that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Way, before I go back to Vice Mayor Chow.
Just real short, I do agree with Councilmember Willie. We need to get rid of the bottom third of it right away. And also, if I remember correctly, Mayor Paul, last time we did get to add our new items at the meeting, and you actually encouraged us to do that, and quite a few of them made the list. So I'm comfortable with the process.
I think this is good. You know, I concede that Councilmember Willie has, I think, made a superior course of action and motion here. Instead of potentially expanding significantly the list, it has a very strong chance of, you know, contracting it. Vice Mayor Chow, so please feel free, if you wish, to bring your substitute motion at this time.
Just a question. Why is 13, 13, 13? Is there not 15, 15, 15? Is there a reason?
Let's refer to our institutional memory on staff here on this. So Katie, so why was it 13 before? I'm sure it wasn't necessarily for good luck, but what was the?
I actually don't think it was 13 before. I think we only had 5 5s per council member, because that would indicate 5 number one 15 number one. No, I can't do math. 25 number one priorities already. And so or potentially if you didn't all align with the same one. So we actually had 5 number 5s, I believe. And then I think we had some number, it might've been 18 3s and X number of 1. It wasn't 13 3. I think Councilmember Willie was just making a nice set of numbers that then result in a list of 39, which is more manageable than the 60 something.
That's fair. And so Councilmember Willie, is that an accurate reflection of your thinking process there?
Yeah. My memory wasn't quite that good. Yeah, I think we got 5 5s, and then I think we got 13 3s and 13 1s.
I see.
And if that's enough, you know, 13 and 13 is 26 plus 5, 31. You know, I'm perfectly fine that of that 69 list, I'm happy to tell the 31 that I find to be the most important to the community.
Right, and the 5-point rankings were particularly weighted so as to, I think, distinguish those items that were, I think I kind of like the, I think having that limited number of 5s did tend to almost artificially inflate a few, but you're the person who put the motion on the table. If you want to keep it as it is, 13 of each, 5, 3, and 1, that's fine. But you know, if after, you know, being reminded from Katie of our process last year, I'd be happy to accept it as the seconder if you wanted to take the number of 5s down from 13 to 5.
Well, I think what that does is it helps to shrink the list a little sooner. And again, we know we've got limited staff resources, and this is a huge list. So if nobody objects, I think I'd prefer 5 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s, and make more progress.
I'm fine keeping it consistent with last year as well. So as the move-in and the seconder, let's go ahead and make that the motion on the table then.
Thank you.
All right, let's go. Okay, and now we have Councilmember Moore. And Councilmember Moore, and Vice Mayor Chow, I promise we will get back to you as the person requesting substitute motion. But on this current iteration of the motion on the table, Councilmember Moore, did you have a comment?
Yes, I want to comment on how the process worked last year. So it was similar to what we're looking at here, and from my perspective, I added Stockelmeyer House, and I added a domestic violence shelter home, and neither of those items ended up on the list. And now a year has passed, and we have 3 properties which we've looked at, and they're not in this list to even have a discussion on it. So we're all going to be going back with this list without that, and then ranking it. And that's why I understand you don't want to see the list get longer and have everybody rank all of these items, but I could see the same thing happening again, and it's anyway. Just be aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. We're back to Vice Mayor Chow. Vice Mayor Chow, did you want to bring your substitute motion?
Yeah. So I would like to modify the list to include the council proposed items to the list in attachment C. So we will have a list starting with list of council items, and then commission items, and then staff proposed items. And I think 13, 13, 13 is okay because this is the first round of ranking. I think we can go a little broader. The next round, we could narrow it down. Maybe we should even do 15, 15 so that we have some rough priority, but then it's not as limiting. And I think the purpose of this study session is for everyone to propose items, which is what I did. And if my items is not included, I feel, why are we here? And then it used to be the council proposed item first, which was end of January. We didn't do that. And now we are combining that with this today. So I would like to be honored. The council proposed item should come first. I understand some council members maybe didn't come prepared with items to propose. Then I am open to a amendment.
Mayor, before you start deliberating, I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. You brought forward your motion. I think it's very clear. You're asking for a consolidated list, including council items, and you want 13 5s, 13 3s, and 13 1s for ranking. So let me go, before you start deliberating and arguing for the substitute motion, let me ask our council, is there a second to Vice Mayor Chow's substitute motion? Councilmember Moore.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Councilmember Moore seconds. Let's go ahead and bring it back to Vice Mayor Chow at this point.
So I understand some council members may have items they want to propose, but they didn't come prepared today. So a potential amendment is to allow council to propose it maybe say by Friday to Katie, and Katie can create a consolidated list, and then we can rank them and submit our ranking the next meeting. And then that way everyone get a chance to weigh in with council proposed items.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor, I will not be voting for your substitute motion. And my reason is that I am convinced by the reasoning of Councilmember Willie that it would be better to cut the list right now. But the other part of this is that under the conditions of the first original motion, if you have 31 items that you want to set forward that are completely unique to the list that we have before us within the packet and updated as a desk item for attachment C, you can do that. And so I think that if you wanted to make 31 unique items or amalgamations of other items, you could potentially do that under this, and then we would in effect have the same benefit of what the council input was. And I think that this is a changing process as well. that we certainly haven't refined and perfected. Personally, I actually like seeing the process go through and visited upon our commissions and seeing this comprehensive list before thinking about what else might supplement it, or for lack of a more delicate way to put it, compete with the items that are here coming from council. So I'm actually okay with the way that this is panning out. Councilmember Moore, you have a hand raised, and then we'll go back to Vice Mayor Chow.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So I'm kind of wondering, this list doesn't include the suggestions that I had made last year. So how, in order to give like just even the discussion about how we're going to dispose of or take care of the properties we own, which is a requirement that we have, how to have that. If I were to vote for your motion, it doesn't seem like that proposal gets a fair shake, because it's not going to be in front of anybody to look at. And then I could put it on my list, and I'm going to have 1-5, and no one else is really going to consider it, or they'll possibly have their own pet project that they want to have. So that's my concern there, and that I think probably at the last meeting that that council was asked to add work plan items that we would like to have on this list, and so that we would see them today, and then all of us, and give them all, a fair look over, rather than this way. So I feel like this if I were to vote for yours, then the items that I'm interested in seeing aren't really going to have a chance. And so that's the problem I see there. So I wish there was a way to make that a little bit more fair. And it was disappointing not getting anything on the list last year, and I feel like it's going to get repeated again here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. I think what I'll say is that we would have the discretion in the following meeting to reconsider the list based upon what council members have added. But we would also have the probable benefit of significantly cutting down on the list based upon what did or didn't get, or what did not, I should say, get support and allocated points. So I think I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to be snide about it, and it's not meant in that spirit at all. But I think that when I reflect upon your added items last year, I know that people had an opportunity to consider them, and if they didn't get the support, then I think perhaps that's more of a reflection of individual priorities kind of writ large into the group of 5. But I completely understand the perspective, and in terms of the items that you were interested in adding, that's one of the reasons I was trying to make sure that council did visit the various sites that the city owns, individually, with our staff members to get that awareness, brought to the near forefront this cycle. Katie, you have your hand raised. Did you want to speak to any of the points that were brought up here?
I think, and I don't know if this helps to clarify, but I kind of envisioned this process we're talking about right now as the mayor has presented it, was we are doing almost a pre-ranking at this preliminary stage. And then at the next meeting, we will do a full ranking, including all the new council members' suggested items. So there will be a full ranking process with all of the new items for all council members to consider.
Yeah, I do think that we're talking about 2 different ways to get to the same point, it seems. But I tend to think the original motion has the faster way. But Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand raised, and I will go ahead after your comment to call for a.
I think I want to clarify something. Is Katie said it. So what you are proposing is today we rank only the non-council items, so that we cut them down, and then next time, council members are encouraged to propose their prioritized new items in addition. Then we will do another ranking. in that meeting or after that meeting. So that's where we will consider the council proposed items and the higher rank the other items, right? So next time is where. So
Vice Mayor Chow, Katie's not proposing anything. We have your substitute motion on the table.
is that what you have in mind? That's my question to you. Is that what we will have in mind? If we support your motion, we rank the items. In the next meeting, we will each propose our.
No, that's not correct. You have you're not understanding the original motion accurately. So the original motion is that you do rank the existing items, but if you have items that you want to add, go ahead and add those and rank them in that list.
When will other people rank my item, or I rank other people's items?
After in the next meeting, at or after the next meeting. So if you have, so like I was saying, if you have 31 unique items that you're adding to this list, then those will all get onto the document that we're provided for the next meeting. And then it's not as you're describing, we're ranking just the stuff that's in front of us right now, and then we talk about stuff we want to add in the next meeting. You are in the process of adding that stuff right now under the original motion. And then that could get fully considered by the entirety of the council at the next meeting, because that new document will then have all of these items. Because if you added an item, you wouldn't add an item without putting a point score to it. So it will at least have 1 point, so that it will be included within that new document. So then it gets, so theoretically, okay, you have 5 people. Under this process, you could have, a bunch of new stuff, but I really don't think that's going to happen. I think most of us are just going to rank based upon what's there out of the 69 items, and maybe add at the most a handful. For my own part, I would add 1, maybe 2 items. So that's
against a council proposed item, because it will by default only have 1 vote.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It would have 1 assigned vote, but that would also serve the purpose of introducing the council items without the need for a second meeting after the next meeting to consider those council items. So
can I ask Chris? So if we include the council proposed items today, and the council can propose new items to be consolidated by staff and sent out to the council to rank, and the ranking will be submitted by next meeting, I don't think we violate any Brown Act, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think that's consistent with the response to the mayor's question earlier, that I think it would be best that if new items are added, I think it'd be best if they're circulated without identifying information. And then, of course, you could discuss them at the meeting. But just adding the items to the agenda the list would not be a violation of the project.
Okay, and that way every item gets a fair consideration by every council members, rather than the person proposing has only 1 item, 1 vote.
So that's, I take that as a clarification of your substitute motion, which would be to insert a point where we are to send to staff our additional items on the list that we wish to have for ranked consideration. And then staff sends back to each of us individually the new list, the new total list. It's going to be more than 69 items at that point. And then we're asked then to assign. So you're asking for this full so-called fair consideration. That would insert another round between now and the next meeting.
No, it's the same round.
I'm not saying another round of consideration in a public meeting, but in order to generate this document that you're referring to, council needs to send to staff what their additional items are. Staff needs to send back to us a new consolidated list to vote on. So that's the round I'm referring to get us to the point where we have a new consolidated list that we're voting on. I'm okay with that. I think it adds time, and I don't know if it's really necessary time to have, especially given our staff commitment that we would have that full list in front of us, irrespective, the next time we meet. But if your sticking point is that you want to be able to have everyone consider, all the particular items that would be set forth, then I understand what your concern is. So I think that that's solid clarification. I would suggest that you identify some times that you want council to send these new items to staff. Well, 3 times, I think. First, when council sends these new items to staff, when staff sends us back this consolidated new list individually, and when council should then send back to staff their rankings of this new consolidated list.
So I think the consolidated list only needs to be posted with the council agenda for the next meeting when we consider this. It doesn't even need to come to us earlier. It's better if it's come to us earlier.
Well, then you're not going to be able to take a vote on it before the next meeting. So
we're holding a public meeting anyway, right? So we will go rank it and submit
right.
our rank at the next public meeting anyway.
Well, but then by the next public meeting, you don't have the benefit of eliminating things like Councilmember Woolley was saying was the benefit of his motion, because you could take that initial vote. Jim, you had your hand raised. Did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
Oh, well, I just with the, when council, if we went that direction, when council turns something in, that could be a hard, fast date. But it would be very hard from my side for staff to say, oh, we can turn it around in 2 days, because we don't know what's coming in, what kind of, I don't know if you want to say research or modifications, or go back and forth with council to make sure we have it. So that would be a very tough time to say staff would have to turn it around in 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is, because we don't know what's coming into us at that point.
Right, and the motion doesn't have a limit on number of items that council.
Right, well, it could be over 100, for all I know, by the time we're all done, so.
Well, we should probably ask Vice Mayor Chow to identify a limit. It could theoretically be any number, frankly. Based on the motion.
Another question is for next meeting. So let's say we cut it down to, if it's 13, 13, 13, we cut it down to 30. So next meeting, are we going to further cut it down to 15, or are we? Okay, anyway, 13, 13, 13, likely it won't be 39. It will be more than that. And then we would further cut it down. Yeah, that's fine. So I understand that the staff limitation, but all we are proposing a list, right? You just combine the list. So I and Councilmember Moore can collect the list. You just have one list attached to today's list, just 2 lists that we are ranking. So I don't know. And then also, if what you are proposing is we submit the ranking before the next council meeting, staff would cut it down before the next council meeting. I think that violates the Brown Act.
No, staff's not cutting down. Staff's producing to us the consolidated result of our rankings. We're not instructing them to take items out. So but if something received no points, then that's information that we would be provided in that document.
So we would submit the rankings before the next agenda packet goes out. So the next agenda packet would have the aggregated list and the ranking, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So now it's just a matter of who does the work to collect the list from all the council members to create list A. Now we have list B, right? List B is attachment C. We have list A is the council list. So if everyone sends the idea to me, I create that list. Does that violate Brown Act? And then I send it to the staff.
Yeah, so sorry, let me jump in. So yeah, so we would have to be, the contact person would have to be on staff. We couldn't have council members communicating directly about this agenda item outside of the meeting.
So can we create a subcommittee to say this subcommittee collect that list and give it to staff?
Okay, at this point, Vice Mayor Chow, I'm going to go ahead and check in with Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Moore, did you have a comment at this point? I will note that you were the seconder of this motion, the substitute motion, and so I'm inclined to call a question on the substitute motion, frankly.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I'm wondering if the Vice Mayor would accept a limitation on the council additions to the existing list of either 5 or 10 new items maximum, and that each council member, maybe 5 items would be my preference. Each council member could add 5 items or none if they already saw things that were great. And that way we don't end up with so many items that we end up confused when we go to rank them. So I'm...
Yeah, accept that.
5?
So 5 maximum items per council member.
Okay, through the mayor then, we have a recommendation for an alteration to the main motion.
To the substitute motion, you mean?
I'm sorry, to the substitute motion, yes. So 5, we want to limit it to 5 items per council member.
So if my question earlier was, if the staff doesn't have time to collect these 5 items from each council member, can we form a subcommittee to help create the list and to send it to staff?
You're gonna collect the list from the other council members, Vice Mayor?
We form a subcommittee to collect that. Does that work?
But the list is comprised of suggestions from the entirety of council. You
Yeah,
can't.
that's correct. Yes. So I still think that would create the same problem because it is the members of the subcommittee would be communicating with other members of council.
So the staff doesn't have time to collect 5 items from each council to create a list?
I think we could collect 5 items.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember White?
Just a brief question for the staff. It's not just about collecting the items. You still have to do some research on it, right? If you want to put it on the recommendations, the time, the other things. It's not just like put an item on it.
So what I think we would do to expedite turning it around for ranking, from my understanding, is we'll receive the items, we'll put a title and objective in alignment with what's been provided to us. We send it back out for a ranking. And then once that ranking is received, we can then flesh out items that seem to have gotten a vote. Or we could return with a list that's identical to the one that we have today without additional information as well.
But it seems, Katie, that the substitute motion basically says, until a particular time, individual council members can contact you with a list of up to 5 items. Okay, and those 5 items have to be something that's not already on there. And so you give people until a deadline, and then you add up to 30 items, right? I mean, because if there's 5 council members and 5, or you add up to 25 items to this list of 69. So potentially anywhere from 69 to 94, I guess, items could be sent back out to council individually, and then we're asked to rank, right? And so that ranking then gets back to you individually from each council member, and then what's consolidated from there is what's produced at the next council meeting for further discussion. So that's my understanding of what the substitute motion is. So there are still 3 time points. There's council gets back to you with their up to 5 items. You get back to council once everything's consolidated into one document, and then council gets back to you again with regard to their ranked, order, or like 5 5s and 13 3s and 13 1s. So that's the substitute motion. Jim, your hand was raised. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you, Mayor. Just for Katie, I just want to make sure that she thinks she can, get this turned around in time. And if it does go this direction, if this is, the vote's taken and everything happens, that, whoever turns anything in, because 30 is quite a few more, just make sure when we turn it in that it's very well delineated on what we need. This is what it is. Everything's laid out just right. So we limit the go back and forth and try and get the clarity on those items.
Right. Thank you, Jim, for that. So you've got your first two substantive columns in this attachment C. Basically, council, my colleagues, if this passes, you're going to have to produce the project/task description, and more importantly, I think the project objective, right? Of course, you're not going to be producing the staff recommendation column or the justification considerations, because that's staff stuff. You're going to have to produce a project task description and a project objective, and then vote on it. I mean, if you wanted to stand any chance of actually having this, advance in a thoughtful manner, or in an efficacious manner, I should say. So that's I think taken under advisement, and I think what Jim was saying, Katie, you're taking on this work and willingly, and we thank you for that. If this substitute motion passes, yeah, and I think kind of mapping out the time. Right now we're on March 8th. Someone tell me the date of the first Tuesday in April. Well, I know it's not. I know it's not April 1st.
April 5th.
Okay, so April 5th. There are 5 Tuesdays in March, so that actually gives us an extra week. So you could turn it around. I mean, basically giving people deadlines of I think maybe till the end of this week on time point 1. And then seeing where you're at, Katie, in terms of what council gives you, and then turning that around into a new document they send back to council and telling council that it has a certain number of days. I would suggest maybe 3 working days, or trying to peg it to the end of next week, for instance. But even if it weren't in at the end of next week, and we went into the following week, it still wouldn't be right at the or in the deadline for producing materials for the following council meeting, because of the relatively long month that we have, vis-a-vis the number of Tuesdays in March. So, Councilmember Willie, you have your hand raised at this time. As the maker of the original motion, did you want to express any kind of sentiment on the substitute motion?
True. I really don't like doing this, but I'm going to say I'm only going to support the original motion. And I say this because of the voting sequence that we have, that, trying to get from point A to point B, I'm only going to support the original.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. And then, I will also, I'm consistent. I think your original motion is a better process, frankly, and I think it gives the opportunity to consider, any of the, additional council, projects that people would like to add. I think it's cleaner. It's more efficient. I think you'll stand a better chance of, keeping us on track. But however, it is sounding to me like the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Moore will be supporting the substitute motion. And if that's the case, if it comes down to Councilmember Way, I can work either way, honestly, with regard to, whatever's put forth. I think it puts more strain on staff resources, but, but I think that given the limit of 5 items and, the strong suggestion that we come up with our project tasks and descriptions, or objectives rather, I think it should be relatively straightforward to turn that second step around. So let me go to Vice Mayor Chow and then Councilmember Moore, and then hopefully we can call a question on the substitute motion. Vice Mayor Chow.
So I think you are making it more complicated than it is. Here's what we have right now in the staff report. All we need everyone to submit is project title and a very short description like here. And the staff just need to collect the title and the objective. They don't need to create the last column there. So I don't know why is that so hard to create. All the council who submit will give you the text for the title and the description. You just need to copy, paste to a doc. That's it. How much time do you need? 2 days? 3 days? You can do that in an hour. So I totally don't understand what is the hold up here. The staff doesn't need to do anything else, just copy.
Okay, Vice Mayor, you've made that point several times now. I think it's clear. And, you know, in fact, I actually made that point as well. Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I do agree with you, Vice Mayor as well. I think as I said earlier, we really should have a table here in this packet that says City Council, what we have proposed for work items. And so I think that's, you know, part of it is we're a little left out of this list. We've got it from all of the commissions and nothing from us. So yeah, so I think in the future, we should probably have one meeting prior to this one where we put out our suggestions and then rank everything all together and give everything a fair shake rather than seeing something later on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. All right, Vice Mayor Chow, I'm going to ask. Katie, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Just really briefly, and just to clarify for Councilmember Moore that this was the meeting that we were intending to have new items by council brought up, and then the next meeting we were going to rank them all together. So that was the intended process. We're just inserting some efficiency in pre-ranking. So that's great. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Exactly. This is the meeting we should propose new items. I don't want to create proposed items before the commission. I want to see what they propose, staff propose, then I come up with what I think is missing. And that's exactly what I did. And you guys are changing the process.
I you know, Vice Mayor Chow, I think of it.
Ignoring council input.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
You're ignoring council priorities.
No,
and,
I don't.
Violating what this meeting is supposed to do, where the council is supposed to propose items.
Okay. Well, you know, I just respectfully disagree with your assessment of it. I think, you know, you're making it unnecessarily complicated, frankly, and there's an opportunity to have your input, and in fact, a more abundant one under the original motion. So I'm going to call the question. If there are two people,
my original motion is not to allow any council member to propose additional items, to just take whatever item proposed today and then create that list. If that's simpler, let's do that. Then there is no one can propose more items. Just take whatever people have proposed today.
okay. Well, I tried to informally call the question, but I believe I need a second for my motion to call the question at this time. So Councilmember Woolley, will you second my motion?
Yes, I'll second it, and I'll say that the motion that we have on the table does allow council to think of something tomorrow or next day.
Well, we don't have that on the table right now, Councilmember Woolley. The motion on the table is.
Well, the substitute motion.
Right.
Yeah. But the original motion allows additions. So I just want to be sure that's not left out. But I'll call.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for seconding the motion to call question. So there has to be an immediate vote under these conditions, and we do need 4 votes to call the question and require a vote on the substitute motion. So, Madam City Clerk, would you conduct a roll call vote on the motion to call the question?
Councilmember Moore?
No.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow?
No.
Mayor Paul?
Yes.
Motion fails with Moore and Chow voting no.
Okay. So we have a substitute motion on the table, Vice Mayor Chow and Councilmember Moore, you were the no votes to call the question on your own motion. So please feel free to continue to deliberate at this time. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I have a question, Vice Mayor. So as it stands right now, I just want to clarify the substitute motion. In fact, if you're able to put it up on the screen, I would appreciate that. And I believe we had the additions trimmed down to 5 each per council member. And we had some dates for, I believe it was Friday, to turn in our 5 items. And then we've got some back and forth that's going to happen after that time. So I just want to clarify that.
So my original motion, is my mic on?
Yes, it is.
My original motion was just to add the proposed item from today. But I guess later on I said, okay, if other council members are not prepared with their items, allow council members to send post the items to the staff by, let's say, Thursday with project info and the description. 5 maximum items per council member.
Okay. And then what happens next?
Staff send, I think just 2 lists. Send the council, propose the item list and the attachment C for the council. I think you can label each differently, like A1, A2, and C1, C2 to separate the 2 lists. And then the council submit the ranking of 13-1, 13-3, 13. Yeah, so this is
by what date?
Amendment. By when will this item come back?
Tentatively April 5th.
April 5th, right? So let's give it a week by March 13th. Then the staff has time to come to, the staff have 2 more weeks to, yeah.
Vice Mayor, may we back it up to the 25th, and that way staff has all of their documents for the agenda packet earlier? I think that because we're turning it in within 2 days, our 5 items, that staff should be able to get us our new list, give them a week. I think that would be acceptable. If Katie can do that. And so we turn it in on the 10th, we get the full list on the 17th, we have it turned back in by the 25th. Would that work? Are those reasonable? Oh, by
25th?
Yes. And then we will see it on the agenda on the 5th, and that gives staff time to see everything.
So the staff send the council the list by when?
By the, so it's due, we need to turn it in by the 10th. Staff will give us the new list by the 18th, and then we rank it, we have a week to rank it, the 25th.
And the council rank by Friday.
And if you will, please perhaps consider changing the very first day to Friday, and we'll just go Friday, Friday, Friday. So it's our work is due Friday, 3/11, and then the next Friday, the next Friday. Yeah, make that 10/11 on the first Friday, March 11th. Great.
Okay, Katie, you have your hand raised?
We need to change the first Friday, March 10th to March 11th. Thank you. And also the first one.
Is that enough time for the staff to? So the next council meeting is the 5th, right? Agenda packet need to be ready by the 30th.
Yeah.
So the staff needs to cut down the list according to our priority, right? I think that takes more time. Compiling our list shouldn't take too much time, right? That's just copying and paste. Maybe Katie has more insight on timeline.
I think your instincts are correct, Vice Mayor, that I think once I get your 5 items, presuming that the title and objective are very clear, don't need any clarification, I can compile that rather quickly and get that back out to you. My one thing, I think this timeline is okay, assuming that what you're expecting at that April 5th meeting is a list with your input and ranking the same way that it is today, in the sense that it has a title and objective, but that won't be enough time before posting to include other information based on what, in terms of like budget and resources needed and what size project, and because that is the research intensive part.
Yeah. That's only if the council rank it higher, then we might need staff input on those, right? But if the rank is not high, there's
right. But I need at least probably 2 weeks because it's a whole citywide department coordination effort there. Because this is going on amongst all of the ongoing work program items and regular operations, and it's just one more thing that we're collaborating on. Which is okay, we just need a little bit of time to get that done. So if the expectation on April 5th is that we just have this list of ranked titles and objectives, definitely can do that. But if you're hoping to get this more detailed information, I think we might need more time.
Yeah. So does this timeline look okay? This Friday and next Wednesday, I'm changing that to Wednesday because the agenda needs to be ready by Wednesday, right? Or yeah, I think let's make that Tuesday, so it gives you more time, and then we can submit the list on Thursday. Oh, yeah, that was it. Yeah, does that look okay?
Through the mayor, Vice Mayor, check the Tuesday 3:15, and then Tuesday 3:22, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. So we are all we are adding is to allow the council to propose items, and then so that we can all rank that. Right.
Okay, we have Jim with a hand up.
We can do that if we propose new items on April 5th. The staff still wouldn't have time to do any research or do anything, and then we'll start prioritizing them. That doesn't seem to make sense. That would be even worse.
Well, under the original motion, Vice Mayor Chow, you have the ability to add in items.
Yeah. Okay, so this is an amended motion.
Okay, Councilmember Moore, as a seconder, do you agree to those amendments?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Jim, you have your hand raised. Did you want to make a comment at this time?
Yeah, it's just that sort of reiterating what Katie said is when it comes to April 5th, since we don't really know what's going to come in, if on that date a council member says, hey, well, what will this cost? How many staff hours or how much staff time? We really won't be able to answer that because we won't have that time available to really dig into the questions. So I just want to make sure council is aware of that problem or issue.
That's fair.
Wait, Mayor, can I?
Well, I would say presumably if the item sustains, then there will be follow-up, from staff to evaluate it appropriately.
Right, that would be correct. It's just on that date, if it happens to be on there, if it falls off, that's not a problem. If it makes it on there, then we would have to go back and do some additional research to get the staff, to get counsel from staff the proper information.
Okay. So, Mayor, can I comment?
Yes, Vice Mayor Chow.
So, with you and Council Member Willis' motion, we would each write in certain items that won't get evaluated at all, but they'll get ranked. And then they will come to the April 5th agenda. And the staff still wouldn't have time to do anything and will be ranking them. That's giving staff even less time to evaluate and rank. Why is that better? I don't understand.
I think,
Can the staff?
I think what you're missing is that it will.
I would like the staff's feedback.
Okay.
That process gives them more time.
I think so, because it eliminates the back and forth. And so in that process, and it depends on what timelines council picks today, but I would have, if it's possible to turn around the rankings by Friday, then we have a significant amount of time to organize those rankings and then also provide additional detail for high ranking items.
Well, the original motion had until next Friday, but there aren't any further steps there. It gives council more time to think about what it wants to add, and it also gives staff more time to evaluate what those additional items might be. So, that's. I
would say if it's able to be done by the 16th per se, that would be really great, and I would feel really good about getting you the information.
I don't understand. So original motion is everyone writing an item, and then it will be submitted to the staff by when?
The original motion had the 18th, but Katie just indicated that the 16th would be better in terms of trying to turn over evaluation in time for April 5th. If the substitute motion doesn't pass and it brings back to the original motion, I would be happy to ask the movement to change that deadline to the 16th from the 18th. But yeah, you would have the opportunity under the original motion to propose. It's the distinction is that the full council wouldn't have the look at all the additional items. That's true. So I think that's
each
there's a legitimate difference to consider.
Vote.
I'm sorry?
Any council proposed item gets one vote.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Because I wouldn't see Councilmember Moore's item or your item.
Right.
Your item will automatically be at the bottom of the list.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be at the bottom of the list. The things that didn't get any votes at all would be at the bottom of the list, right? But but we're not forcing a removal of any item, at that point. The comprehensive list would still have.
It's a very confusing process because some items are not seen by everyone. So the ranking is not fair.
I understand. And if you want to deliberate under the notion that you'll convince a third person, you're free to under these rules. I will say we're at 10:49 right now, and if you wanted to delay it another 71 minutes, that's fine. But I will be adjourning the meeting at midnight if it comes to that. So just fair warning. So look, you're free to make your commentary, but I would like to, have the opportunity to fairly run the meeting. I mean, I think your points have been put forward. I appreciate the greater detail, but we have a hand raised from Councilmember Moore at this point.
So can we call the question now? And I think the motion has been very clearly laid out for us and the merits of it. What I appreciate in particular is that I understand that the Vice Mayor's process wish to have the different commissions' information brought to council, and then after we see all their ideas, then we add in ours. And I think this process is getting there, and I think that having this particular important item on the agenda happen after we had the finance part, which was, there's a lot of information there, and then the housing element, which is very, very stressful, that we've taken on perhaps a little bit more than we needed for this particular evening. But kudos to us. We're trudging through it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow, I see that you still have your hand up. If you don't have,
I wish to modify the timeline a little bit. So I think we can submit the list to staff by Thursday, which is a list I think everyone should have been ready today. We are just writing it down in a better format with project title and description. And then I hope copy and paste would take 1 day to create that list of council proposed items. And then we have 1 week to rank. I think that gives the staff plenty of time to evaluate. And that's only 2 days after your proposed, I think your proposal is to get the ranking by March 16th. Lot of typo. So this is just 2 days difference. But then everyone would be able to see everyone else item, and then we have a fair ranking of every item. Yeah, that's the final motion. Can this council member Moore concur?
Through the mayor, yes.
yeah, I hate to.
Only 2 days difference.
No, for me, I'm kind of like, well, if you're going to squeeze staff to turn it around in 1 day, I mean, what's the difference? By making council vote in 5 days or 7, you might as well just make it 3/16 for us. I mean, it's, but I do appreciate the time. I think Katie should have some say in as to whether she thinks that if she receives these 5 emails from us by Thursday, whether she can turn around a document by the following day. I'm not, I'm not familiar with her bandwidth as to whether that would be achievable.
It would, yeah, it would be a little challenging, per se. It could be challenging just given there's other things that we're preparing for as well, not just this item, but.
Thursday at noon. Submit by Thursday at noon, is that better?
It is a little better.
Yeah. Jim, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just, that caveat is, it looks simple, like, oh, just put the name in this little piece, but if we get something that doesn't make sense and we have any go back and forth, I just, there's not a lot of leeway.
And it's our fault, just include a verbatim.
Well, okay. Does anyone else want to weigh in on this? I see Councilmember Willie and Councilmember Way. Are you waving or are you raising your hand, Councilmember Willie? No? Okay. All right. let's go ahead and take a vote on the motion that's on the table then. You know, I will preface this by saying I do appreciate, you know, all my colleagues for, you know, their fine efforts and staff as well. I think we're all working in good faith to try to find.
So I included that clarification. The staff will include the items verbatim without any edits. And then to submit to staff by Thursday at noon.
Okay, got it. Councilmember Moore, do you accept those as modifications?
Yes.
And was that the reason that your hand is raised?
Yes.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote on the substitute motion with its amendments? Thank you.
All right. Okay, so this is for the third amended substitute motion. Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Councilmember Way.
No.
Councilmember Willie.
No.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah, aye.
Mayor Paul.
No.
The motion fails with Way, Willie, and Paul voting no.
Okay, we're left with our original motion. Councilmember Willie, I would ask that you move the deadline from the 18th up to the 16th.
Yes. Move the deadline. Yes.
Can I accept that as a seconder of the motion? I don't see hands raised. That's the original motion now modified with the deadline of next Wednesday. Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is raised.
Are we doing 13 ones, 13 threes, 13 fives, or?
We're doing 5 fives, 13 threes, and 13 ones. With the ability to write in your suggested project tasks and project objectives.
Okay.
Councilmember Moore?
So for in the future, I would prefer that all of the council additions are brought to the table and we do our ranking, knowing the full menu of suggestions by the council. So I'm very disappointed with this particular process, and I feel like I'm having a repeat of last year, unfortunately. But just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moore. And I will commit that the next time this comes back, if this motion passes, that we will have the opportunity to vote on the full slate, and hopefully with the with the time provided to staff, we can have a more meaningful evaluation of those items that are added. So, Madam City Clerk, I don't see any further hands raised at this point. Could you please conduct a roll call vote on this motion?
Councilmember Moore.
No.
Councilmember Way.
Aye.
Councilmember Willie.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow.
No.
Mayor Paul.
Yes.
The motion carries with Moore and Way voting no.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And my fellow council members, I do see a hand raised from Councilmember Moore. Did you have a comment at this time, or?
I thought I heard the clerk say Way instead of Chow, Vice Mayor Chow.
I apologize if I did. It's Moore and Chow voting no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Moore. So to confirm, Madam City Clerk, the motion passes, correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay. So we are now at the end of our agenda. I thank you for a good meeting. I truly believe it was a good meeting. I know we've been very busy these last couple weeks, and we do have another full meeting next week. And so I'll go ahead and adjourn this special meeting of March 8th, 2022. And we will see you for our second regular meeting of March on the 15th, next Tuesday. Thanks very much. Good night, and meeting adjourned.